Hey guys, I'm AJ Forsyth with iCracked. With me is Ed Waldrop, who does all the training and education for our iTechs.
Hi guys.
And what our iTechs do is they actually travel to customers and repair their iPhones, iPods, and Samsungs and iPads on site. iCracked is a on-demand network where we have over 700 individuals that will come fix your iPhone 6 or your 6 Plus. And if we don't have iTechs there, we have do-it-yourself kits that will actually walk you through how to repair different components, mainly the screen of your broken devices. Today is the launch day for these iPhone 6 and 6 Pluses, so we're gonna be doing a teardown. Should be pretty fun. It's the first time Ed and I have ever opened these devices, and we're excited for you to see what's inside, but I hope you enjoy this. We waited all night camping on the sidewalk, and we picked up both a 64 gigabyte version and a 128 gigabyte version, and we will be doing the teardown today and official unboxing of these new phones. The reviews look incredible, and we're excited to get in and see what's inside. And as always, we have do-it-yourself kits where if you ever break your device, we can send you a kit that you can repair it yourself, or go on our website at iCracked.com and a iTech will come to you and fix it on the spot wherever you are. So let's get to opening these because we're eager to see what's inside, and they're also our personal phones. Mr. Waldrop, you want to start opening yours as well?
Yes.
So we have the iPhone 6. This is I believe Ed, you're gonna have to correct me.
128.
128 gig, what, 4.5 inch screen?
4.7 inch.
4.7 inch screen. So we will pull that out. You guys are pretty familiar with what's in these boxes. It's your earpods, charger, and lightning cable. But we're eager to get inside, so.
And then here we have a 64 gig slate gray iPhone 6 Plus with a 5.5 inch screen, ultra thin, and the same internals, charge port, AC adapter, and audio jacks.
So one of the kind of different design things Apple did on this one is they actually put the power button that is normally on the top right here, they put it on the side. And the first time I held it, I was a little bit confused, but that's where the new power button is. So we're just powering them on. As always, we're gonna use our iCracked toolkit, and we'll be using the proprietary Pentalobe screwdrivers to actually remove the bottom two screws, which is tricky if you don't have the screwdriver, but luckily we do. So I'm gonna power the phone down, and then we'll get right into it.
Thing about the iPhone 6 Plus and standard is you have these nice rounded edge all the way around, so it gets a seamless feel all the way around the body. It's a very lightweight phone. Now that my phone has booted, I'm gonna go ahead and power it down using the button on the side. And again, I went straight for the top.
Classic Ed. In the back here, we're actually using magnetic mats so that you can see that it's holding the screws on regardless of how which way you do it. We make these mats so that if you're ever performing repairs outdoors or indoors, we can actually hold the screws on. And just like the 5C and the 5S, I'm gonna be using a suction cup, and Ed's gonna show you a different tool that he's gonna use. But I'm gonna use the suction cup on near the home button right here, and this is the Touch ID button. It's important to keep in mind on the 5S, with the Touch ID on the 5S, when you were opening it, there was a cable connecting the Touch ID to the logic board, and Apple decided to redesign how that cable connects because a lot of people were having trouble tearing it when they actually opened it. So the suction cup's on firmly, and then I'm gonna slowly pry it up. And you can see that it just opens just a tiny bit, and I accidentally turned the phone on, so I'll power it down in a second. But the important thing is you want to open it up as a clamshell like this, because there's cabling up here where you can actually damage and tear it. So open it like a clamshell, and then Ed's going to show you an even cooler tool than my trusty blue suction cup.
So here we have the iCracked, which
is clack.
Sorry. So it's made like a pair of pliers with the two suction cups so that it can grab the underside of the frame and the glass at the same time, and it's a simple pop, and it's open. It only opens a certain amount of distance because the handle touches each other. Once that's off, you can very gently remove the suction cups.
Hey, Ed, do you know why they call it a is-clack?
Why?
Because of the noise when you open it is clack. Our good buddies make that tool, so we're happy to use it. So you can see right here, I actually might break something, so this is the first time I've ever opened one.
Slide it gently forward.
Apparently, Ed, who runs all of our training, so you slide it gently forward right there, and you can see it pops open, but notice the cabling is still on right there, so you don't want to ever tear that cable. But Ed, I'm going to let you lead this because you're more familiar with this than I am.
So same with the iPhone 6 Plus. Once it's open, I can slide it slightly forward, as the top of the bezel have these notches that slide into the frame, and this is what keeps the glass from popping out. So once that's up, I then can set the display at a nice 90-degree angle. Looking in here, we have a very large battery. We have our vibration motor, loudspeaker, charge port. We have the bracket holding all the LCD cables together. And what I'm looking for
is that an iPad mini battery?
Yeah, almost. So what I'm looking for is the battery connector, because the first thing we want to do is disconnect the battery before we even consider taking off the screen. And here on the iPhone 6 Plus, it's located at the very top. And I'm assuming it's the same on the iPhone 6.
Okay. Well, I did not disconnect the battery, but I will after this. One of the real reasons it's actually important to disconnect the battery is because since we're using metal tools, although they are ESD safe, you can cause a short that will actually ruin your ruin the logic board, which is basically the brain of the iPhone. And I actually don't want to ruin the phone, considering it is a 128 gigabyte one, because I like to carry pictures of Ed with me everywhere I go. So in order to disconnect the battery right here, you can see it's connected to the logic board under these two screws. I'm just going to make sure my phone is powered off, and we're going to remove these. We're going to remove these two screws right now. So I have screw one, and this is before you go any further, as you want to remove any electricity running through the board. So you have this. Here's the first screw, and I would put it on my magnetic mat, and then you have the second screw right here. So you remove these two screws, and you're going to be doing this on the 6 and 6 Plus. I'm going to use my nylon spudger, so you don't want to use any metal from here. So you see that? I removed this little metal shield, and then you're going to use your nylon spudger to just pop this up. So you can see that this pops up, and now this has ended all the current going through the logic board. And so just the anatomy of the phone, you can see the bottom speakers right here. You have your battery, earphone port, lightning port, SIM card tray right here. You have your CPUs and GPUs right here. And then up here you have 5 screws holding 4 different cables onto the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus. So we're going to start by removing the middle one and then the 4 ones surrounding it. And then you're going to be all the cables controlling the screen, the home button, the front-facing camera, the ear speaker. There's another microphone up here, and then the ear speaker are routed through here under there. Ed, what does ESD mean?
Electrostatic discharge.
What does it do?
Electrostatic discharge is something that's carried through the air. It's a high stream of voltage that when you touch two components together, it sends a shock. Very similar to walking on a carpet with your socks and then touching your cat or the person next to you.
We have 2 cats. So
that little shock you feel, that is an electrostatic discharge.
I'm gonna, after I've already removed the 5 screws as opposed to the 4 on the iPhone 5C and 5S, there's a middle screw that we didn't see previously, but we have 3 cables connecting the LCD assembly, And so one of the things that this assembly has on it, which we'll go over in a second, is the Touch ID, which actually has a cable that goes all the way up to this top. Whereas on the 5S, the cable actually connected directly to the logic board. And so you have your LCD cable right here, you have your digitizer cable right here, and then you'll have the cabling for the front-facing camera, the ear speaker, and the proximity sensor, as well as the Touch ID. So it may be 3 or 4 cables, but we'll find out here in a second, given it's only 3 hours old, 2 hours old. So you see, you just gently pry them up. You don't want to put too much force. And then you can see under there, we have a third cable that was kind of hidden. So we're going to go in there with just the tip right here and go right there. And then there's actually a fourth cable under there, which my guess is the Touch ID. And so we're going to remove these 4 cables. Notice how I'm keeping the screen at about a 90-degree perpendicular angle to the phone. And so we're going to get that fourth cable. And you see that we have these 4 cables right here. So all these 4 cables, once again, one of them controls the LCD, digitizer, Touch ID, and finally your front-facing camera, proximity sensor, and ear speaker. So you can see that this housing, it looks somewhat similar to a 5C or 5S. It's actually very thin. One of the great benefits of using in-cell technology is embedding the digitizer directly onto the LCD and removing a layer completely. And you can see that the home button, which is the Touch ID fingerprint sensor, as well as a haptic feedback button?
Yes.
I guess so. And then you can see on the front right here, we have the front-facing camera, the ear speaker, and the proximity sensor. So what this sensor right here actually does is it detects light and objects near it. Does it use infrared waves?
Yeah, almost similar to a radar or sonar type system.
So, and then you can see right here we have the ear speaker. But so what we're going to do next on both the iPhone 6, which is this one, and the 6 Plus, which Ed has, is we're going to remove the screws on this metal frame right here. So the first step is screw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So there's 9 screws on this, and there was 6 on the previous generation?
Yes.
And then after that, we will be removing the home button, which is both a button itself and a fingerprint sensor with screws 1 and 2. As always, we have instructions at this time that can walk you through exactly how to do this. And then we also sell a template where you can remove the screws and put them on a specific area on there. And then you can also get a magnetic mat which will hold the screws in place, which actually is pretty incredible. But I'll be removing these screws, and Ed can walk you through him removing the most likely 4 cables over there.
So the top area of the iPhone 6 Plus is actually the power button and the volume control flex cable. The battery is actually in the center of the logic board, which I've removed the bracket with the 2 screws, and now I've gone in and disconnected my battery, which will allow me to take off the bracket located up at the top. So the 6 Plus LCD bracket is held in with 6 Phillips head screws, which are all in various lengths.
There's a lot of screws over here, man.
Yep. Better you than me. So now that I have the bracket off, then I can go ahead and start disconnecting the cables using my ESD safe spudger here. So the first thing I'm going to do is connect what appears to be the digitizer cable. Right there. And then we'll come down here, and this would be the front-facing camera, upper microphone, ear speaker, proximity, and ambient light sensor cable. And this little guy here will be the liquid crystal display. And the last one, I'm assuming, actually the last one's going to be digitizer, then LCD, and then they've separated the upper section between the ear speakers and the cameras and ambient light sensor and proximity sensor, leaving us the same 4 flex cables.
So one of the things that I noticed on this generation that I hadn't seen previously is on the previous generations you could actually remove this entire metal plate, which, Ed, correct me, is for heat and radiation.
It is for transferring the heat from the liquid crystal display to allow it to dissipate through the aluminum frame of the phone.
So one of the things on the previous generation was that you could actually remove these 8 screws and then pull it off. Here it looks like you actually have to remove this top speaker unit first, because it looks like this piece of metal covering the speaker and the proximity sensor and front-facing camera is actually above the metal on this frame. So there's 2 screws, there's screw 1 and 2. They're gonna be different sizes, as you can see, one's higher up than the other. And so what we're actually gonna do is remove those right now, and then we can get to removing the actual metal plate. And so we have this screw coming off. So you see that's a fairly long screw. I try to keep them in certain areas on the magnetic mat so I can reassemble it. Here's the smaller screw. And one of the things that's actually, you can see right here, is the springs on the ear speakers are actually contact points for the speaker to actually work correctly. So if you reassemble your front assembly and your ear speaker's not working, I would check these springs and how it's actually fitted on there. So here's the second screw, so I'm gonna put that on my magnetic mat. And then I'm gonna gently remove that, and you can see this piece comes right off. And I'm gonna set that aside with the other pieces I have. And one of the things that I'd like to point out right here, your front-facing camera, which you can see is fairly loose, and you can kind of move it up. You see that's covering up the ear speaker, which on those springs we were talking about, here's the 4 contact points. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the springs, 1, 2, 3, 4. And as well as the proximity sensor looks like it's under it. So I'm gonna see if the ear speaker comes right off, which I assumed it does. So you can see the ear speaker, so you have a magnet, probably a rare earth magnet on the back. And then you can see that it's larger than the previous generation, which this is what gives you the noise in your ear. So we're gonna remove that. Since this is magnetic, I'm sure it's gonna stick right there, so I can remember where I put it. And then you wanna be very careful right here, because you can actually see where they put the proximity sensor. And this cable is gonna be very easy to tear when you're removing this. So I'm gonna be very gentle. I'm gonna use my nylon spudger, and I'm gonna slowly pick up. Sometimes there's a little bit more adhesive than you would like on here. And then you can see that the cable is actually fused to another cable right there. So we're gonna see what we can do to pop this out. And then Ed's gonna walk you through removing his metal frame as well right now.
So on the iPhone 6 Plus, you have the 6 side screws of the thermal plate. You have a top screw, and then you have the home button bracket and the bottom screws of the thermal plate, which have to come off. In which you'll notice here that on this, your biometric scan cable is actually running underneath the thermal plate and coming all the way down to the bottom, which has a nice little connector right there. Folds over. And then comes down. You see my Sesmo here. So the lower part of the biometric scanner cable, so the one that runs across the LCD is nothing more than an extension cable. The physical biometric scanning cable has a small ZIF socket type connector there. And this lower area is held in with just a little bit of adhesive, which it's at a really bad angle to get to.
Ed, if you want a professional to step in here.
There we go.
Okay.
Okay, as you can see right here is the extension cable for the biometric scanner.
Also known as Touch ID, which Ed has rendered inoperable.
That's a big negative. So the upper end of the iPhone 6 Plus has a bracket which also holds the ear speaker and front-facing camera, ambient light sensor, and proximity sensor.
Ed, I would actually be very careful removing the proximity sensor. There's a little bit of adhesive on it, and mine almost tore. I don't think it did, but I'm still trying to figure that out.
So I've got my ear speaker bracket off. And lifting this up, it looks like we have a similar cable to the iPhone 5S, where we have two cables that actually meet into a single, which has a solder joint located right here in the corner. So I'm going to very, very carefully lift this out. There we go. I'm going to fold the cable up, in which I can see the upper microphone, the ear speaker rubber boot. Here is the ambient light sensor with the rubber boot, and the proximity sensor located here as well.
Ed, a boot to you is a gasket to me.
Yeah. So you have the front-facing camera on here with your ear speaker contacts. Looking under the secondary, you have the ambient light sensor and the proximity sensor. But then way down below here, you have the microphone, which is actually held on with a pretty thick amount of adhesive. And then that whole cable assembly can be removed. And just like on all the 5 series phones, in the ambient light sensor area, you have this white filter, which on the white screens, you will not find that.
Cool, so one of the things I'm gonna be doing now is actually removing the metal plate and Touch ID cable, which goes behind the metal plate. I think we call them a thermal plate. And so you can see that there's a indent in the thermal plate right here, which is actually the cable. And then it's very important to note before you remove this metal plate, we already removed the 8 screws. We already removed the 2 screws holding the ear speaker, front-facing camera, proximity sensor, and microphone. And before you do that, it's important to disconnect this little guy right here, because this is actually connecting the Touch ID sensor. And if you tear this, you will most likely never be able to use your Touch ID. Your home button will work, but your Touch ID sensor will not. It's important to note that the Touch ID sensor is actually uniquely paired to this device. So if you accidentally tear this cable, you may be up a river without a paddle. So you can see that I'm going to be lifting this up after I disconnect this right here with my spudger. So it's going to go boop. And you can see that it's a nice little, what looks like 8-point connection. And then I'm going to be gently lifting this up, and we'll see if I don't tear anything. So you can see it looks like there's some adhesive that is holding the bottom of this connection to there. It may help to hit it with a hairdryer or heat gun, or I'm going to try to see if I can get it with the back end of my spudger, just gently peeling it up. Ed's going to laugh if I tear this. I'm gonna look
I notice he's being a little extra cautious here, considering it is his phone.
Thank you, Ed. Did you already get yours up?
Oh, yes. So if you take...
I'm gonna let a professional do this.
So taking the flat end of the nylon spudger, I can run it right in here and very, very gently lift that cable.
Do you see how it's connected right there, though?
Yep. And this one has a lot more adhesive than the Plus, so we'll loosen it from the front end as well.
I wouldn't go that way. let's heat it up.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm gonna go get a heat gun and heat this up. Be right back.
Now still the show here. The 5S, I mean 6 Plus, has been fully disassembled. As you can see, the only thing remaining within the glass here is my biometric scanner with components, the LCD flex cable here with chipset controller, and the digitizer flex cable. Up at the top, you're going to have the front-facing camera centering ring, your ambient light sensor filter and housing, proximity sensor, bracket, and the boot for your ear speaker. And the remaining over here, what you're seeing is all white. That is the adhesive that's left under the microphone. They did use an extensive amount of adhesive under there, so there is probably a really good chance of damaging that cable if you're not cautious. Now that's it for the disassembly of the 6 Plus.
So the Touch ID cable that runs along the plate was being a little tight on there, and I didn't want to tear it. So you never want to tear it. Contact us at iCracked.com if you do. But so I actually went and I took a hair dryer and I gently heated up this side of the screen, and then I heat up very lightly this side. And then I took the flat piece of the metal or of this nylon spudger and I pried it up, and wouldn't you have it, with just a little bit of heat, it comes right off. So you can see that what I was talking about, you can actually see a little bit of remnants of adhesive still right there on this plate. And then one of the unique things that Apple did on this design was they actually ran this under a layer of, what is this tape called, Ed? Is it?
That would be thermal shield tape.
So it's thermal shielding tape that the wire actually runs through there, the flex cable. And then, so now that we have that off, we can actually start to see how the Touch ID sensor actually is put together. So you can tell that the button is right here, and if you listen, you may even hear it click. So I will click it. And then you can see it runs right there, which connected to there. The LCD and the glass itself are fused together. So if you buy a glass-only replacement, it may not work. And you can see that right here you have the chip that runs the LCD, you have the serial number and code for the for these devices, and then you have the bracket for the camera, and then you have your speaker and microphone and front-facing camera right here, and the 3 wires: LCD, speaker, microphone, front-facing camera, and digitizer. So this is actually going to be the first time we've tried this, but I'm going to actually try to remove the Touch ID sensor by actually pushing it in. So you see that the bezel right there. So I'm going to push it in, and you're going to hear it click a little bit. And it may actually help to heat it up, since you see this gasket right there. So I'm pushing it, and then I'm going to try to pry it up. And you can actually hear it peel up. So you can start seeing that the fingerprint sensor right there, I'd like to call it a biometric sensor. So one of the things that looks like there's a little piece of plastic that comes through a gold-plated, I don't know if it's for grounding or what. So we're actually going to try to use our iCracked iSesamo, and we will come on here to pop it up. So you see me going under here, and I'm just gently, very gently wiggling that up, and you can see it pops up. We highly recommend using these tools. And to actually, since you're going to need to remove this home button and put it on the other one, still be very gentle. And you can actually see that the entire Touch ID sensor, and I'll remove this adhesive so you can see it better, the entire Touch ID sensor and bezel is on there. And so on the new screen, what you'll actually do is you'll receive this screen like this from us, and you'll drop your existing Touch ID back into place right here. And you can see it drops right in there. And then there's 2 little pins on both the 6 and the 6 Plus, you actually want to just wiggle it down through here. You can kind of see the pins as I'm doing this. Here, I'm going to get a sharper spudger. And so you can see that that pin and that pin both dropped in, and then that's right there. So what Ed and I are going to do is we're going to do a speed reassembly to see who can reassemble their phone, powered it on, and actually see if it works the fastest. So let's see if we can do this. I'm probably going to win because I pretty much trained Ed in everything he knows. And so now that we've connected the battery back and the 5 screws holding the cables down, we're going to test it. And we tested it already before. I just want to make sure it's all buttoned up all good. So we can see that it's powering on. And then we're going to do a final test before we close it. And then we're going to always remember to put the 2 Penelope screws back in. So as it's powering up, Ed, you can see Ed is testing his device. And then we're gonna actually snap it down, and as soon as it, I just need to make sure the touch works. So it's booting, and this is a 64-bit architecture, correct, Ed?
Correct.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
So you can see the touch works, and then I'm gonna just turn off the screen, and then you can just feel it. The important thing is you insert the screen at an angle back into there, so you can see that it's flush right there, and then you're actually going to hear it snap down. So check this out. You hear that snap, and then you hear that snap. And so now put in the 2 Penelope screws, and you are off to the races. And that right there is the iPhone 6 and 6 Air 6 Plus teardown. So I would go get yours now and take it apart. And if you break anything, call iCracked.
Because we have
parts to sell. Have a good day.